Beneath the vast breadth of the ancient sky, before empires rose and fell, before prayers carved the air with the weight of longing, there existed only the quiet pulse of the elements, raw, trembling, and eager to become more than themselves. In that primordial cradle, the world of the Mexica stirred, shaped not by the hands of mortals, but by the emotional tides of the divine. Everything began with water and sky, married in both harmony and tension, for water could soothe or drown, and the sky could embrace or unleash its fury. Within this elemental bond lived the essence of life, the promise of renewal, and the shadow of destruction. And within these forces, though not yet revealed in full, beat the hearts of two deities whose connection ran deeper than the oldest riverbed. Tlaloc, Lord of Storms, and Chalchiuhtlicue, Lady of Lakes and Flowing Waters. Yet at the dawn of their myth, they moved like currents that sensed each other without touching, circling with yearning older than sunlight. In the high cradle of the heavens, clouds drifted in soft, languid shapes, forming slow spirals that whispered intentions. Rain had not yet found its rhythm in this era. It waited, suspended in a breath between creation and release, trembling like a confession that had not yet left the lips. Storms dreamed of becoming real, of letting their thunder shake the bones of mountains and their lightning carve trembling roads of fire across the sky. The world below, its valleys, its quiet stones, its lonely plains, felt the promise of the coming waters and leaned upward as if to meet them. In this waiting, there was both desire and fear. Water brought life, but it could also swallow. Rain blessed the soil, but too much of it carved destruction. The entire cosmos seemed to balance on the rim of a chalice filled with possibility. The true essence of the myth lived in those early breaths of anticipation, in the unseen movements of the gods behind the veil of stillness. Though Tlaloc had not yet called the first storm, and Chalchiuhtlicue had not yet poured her emerald waters through the earth, the air vibrated with their presence. Water lingered in the sky like a sigh gathering strength. Lakes shimmered below, though they had no names yet, reflecting a sky that seemed to blush with unspoken longing. Every breeze carried the scent of coming rain, warm and electric. Every shadow trembled softly, as if listening to the heartbeat of something immense. Chalchiuhtlicue moved first, though not visibly. Her presence rippled through the deep waters that slumbered in the earth's hollows, stirring them with a gentleness that felt like fingertips tracing the inside of a dream. She was not merely the goddess of lakes. She was the memory of every tender flow, every caress of water against stone, every soft shimmer of light dancing on a calm surface. Her waters glowed with a quiet sensuality, the kind that invited the world to lean close, to be held, to be understood. Under her influence, hidden springs stirred awake, like eyes fluttering open after a long, serene sleep.
Above, Tlaloc sensed her stirring. His storms were not yet born, but his essence rustled across the heavens with a restless hunger. Where Chalchiuhtlicue flowed, he surged. Where she soothed, he trembled. His realm was passion unrestrained, the exhilarating danger found at the heart of a storm. The sky darkened slightly, not with threat, but with anticipation. Thunder formed in the distant edges of the cosmos like a deep, emotional murmur. It was not anger, no, not yet. It was longing, a longing so old that even the mountains felt it before they were fully grown. In this early age, the Aztec cosmos existed in layers of soft color and tender movement. Nothing was harsh. Everything leaned toward becoming. The gods were not yet the figures carved in later tales, formidable, awe-inspiring, and sometimes feared. Here they were sensations more than shapes, powerful emotions that gathered substance the more the world listened. Tlaloc was the first shiver of coolness before rain touches skin, the sudden tightening of the air when clouds gather with intention. Chalchiuhtlicue was the warmth of water wrapping itself around the ankles, the glimmer of sunlight that turns a lake into a shifting jewel. Their realms called to each other through whispers of moisture, through echoes of sky-deep longing. The sensuality of water held the entire world in its gentle cradle. A single droplet lingered on the edge of a leaf longer than it needed to, reflecting the cosmos in miniature, trembling as if weighing whether to fall or cling. Streams traced paths through newborn earth like fingertips sliding over fresh skin, leaving behind delicate marks that shimmered with promise. Even the air felt close, intimate, thick with the perfume of minerals and the soft warmth of creation. The world was alive in a way it would never be again, young, hopeful, unscarred. And in every element, Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue were there, circling one another through their domains without yet touching. They felt each other, in the building pressure, in the stirring currents, in the subtle vibrations of a world ready to awaken. Tlaloc felt her calm depths like a cool whisper against the fire within his storms, drawing his attention with irresistible tenderness. Chalchiuhtlicue felt his charged breath rolling through her waters like a secret pulse beneath the surface, stirring currents she had kept still for ages. Their connection could not be seen, but it could be felt everywhere, in the quiver of a quiet pond, in the low hum of a forming cloud, in the soft, electric brush of humid air. Mortals did not yet exist, but if they had, they would have sensed that something sacred was gathering just beyond sight. Plants lifted their leaves in silent supplication. Stones glistened as if polished by invisible hands. Even the wind seemed to pause, eager to witness the first meeting between the gods of water's two faces, the tranquil flow and the fierce storm. The first rumble of thunder rolled gently through the heavens, not a threat, but a confession. The lakes below answered with a soft rising of their surfaces, a trembling that betrayed anticipation. Between them, the air thickened with moisture, glowing faintly with the birth of something divine. It was in that moment, suspended between breath and touch, that the myth truly began.
Tlaloc emerged from the breath of the heavens, the way a storm gathers on the edges of a restless sky, slowly at first, almost shyly, and then with a sudden surge of intensity that made the world quiver. His form was not merely a body, but a concentration of elemental longing, dense clouds rolling across his shoulders, flashes of silent lightning flickering beneath his skin, a pulse that beat with the heavy rhythm of coming rain. He was power shaped by emotion, a being whose very existence carried the promise of release. Yet beneath that thunderous intensity, there lived a vulnerability he never allowed the world to see. Storms could be misread, feared, misunderstood, and so could he. His desire was vast, crashing inside him like waves pounding against a cliff, searching for somewhere to soften, somewhere to land, somewhere to be held. Chalchiuhtlicue revealed herself in contrast, her essence unfolding like a cool ripple spreading across a still lake. She did not arrive with thunder, but with a quiet depth that invited the world to lean closer, to trust her, to surrender. The shimmering green of precious stones glowed within her waters, shifting softly as she moved, casting slender lines of light against her skin. She embodied every gentle current that had ever wrapped itself around an ankle, every tender stream that had carved valleys with patient devotion. Yet beneath her nurturing grace lived a fierce undertow, an ancient strength as old as the first riverbed. She knew how to soothe, but she also knew how to carve, reshape, erode. Her softness was a choice, not a limitation, and that quiet fierceness hummed beneath her surface like a secret. Tlaloc saw the world in movement, in release, in the thrilling tension between what holds and what finally breaks open. Every cloud felt like a memory waiting to fall. Every rumble of thunder stirred a longing he struggled to name. He carried storms not as weapons, but as emotions that had grown too large to keep contained. His unpredictability frightened some, yet it was simply the truth of who he was, a being whose feelings were too powerful to whisper. When he loved with force. When he mourned, the sky wept for days. When he longed, lightning traced trembling lines across the heavens. And through it all, he remained painfully aware that no storm is ever entirely understood. Chalchiuhtlicue felt the world in layers, in slow expanding rings, in the warmth of sunlight slipping across her lakes, in the heavy silence beneath riverbeds where secrets settled like silt. She embodied emotional patience, though she too carried uncertainties beneath her serene surface. Waters remembered everything, every shift, every tremble, every sorrow, and she felt them all. Her calm was an act of strength, the way a lake holds the reflection of a sky, trembling with storms, yet never loses its own shape. She nurtured because she understood the weight of those who could not. She flowed because the world needed someone who could bend without breaking. Yet within that kindness lived a protective fire, a readiness to rise like a swelling tide when the moment demanded it. When Tlaloc first sensed her presence fully, something inside him stuttered. His storms faltered just enough for the sky to blush with pale light. It was as if the clouds themselves drew closer, curious. He felt her waters calling, not loudly, not with urgency, but with a quiet gravity that tugged at the very center of him. Chalchiuhtlicue in turn felt his approach like mist settling gently along her surface, cool and electric. Rain had not yet begun to fall, yet she felt each droplet to be hovering in the air, suspended between their realms like held breath. The intimacy of it startled her. Water meeting water, sky leaning into lake. There was something undeniably sensual in that soft convergence. Tlaloc was drawn to the depth in her, to the serene stillness that could absorb even the most frantic storm without losing itself. He admired that she did not fear his thunder. Instead, she seemed to listen to it, understand it, even welcome it. And that acknowledgement pierced through the armor he had built from countless roiling tempests. Her calm made him feel seen, not as a looming force, not as a danger, but as a being capable of tenderness he himself had not fully realized. For storms, too, long for a place to rest, to dissolve, to become gentle rain. Chalchiuhtlicue was equally drawn to the intensity in him. His passion resonated with the hidden power she carried beneath her serene exterior. Where others might recoil from the sudden crack of lightning, she felt fascination. Where others felt fear at the roar of thunder, she heard a confession aching to be understood. His unpredictability did not unsettle her, it intrigued her. She sensed in him a vulnerability disguised as chaos, a desire to be accepted even when his storms grew too strong. And she felt a stirring within herself, a pull toward the places where his wildness met her calm, where his force met her patience, where their waters could touch and transform one another.
Their personalities, different as a crashing storm and a quiet stream, intertwined in ways neither of them had expected. The sensual undertones of their connection revealed themselves not through bodies, but through elements. Mist rose where their energies brushed, clinging to surfaces like a soft sigh. Clouds drifted lower, heavy with unfallen rain that longed to trace the curves of Chalchiuhtlicue's lakes. Her waters shimmered in response, ripples forming that had no wind to explain them. The world around them felt the pull. Even the stones warmed subtly under the touch of their combined presence. Tlaloc's emotional vulnerability lay in his fear of overwhelming those he cared for. His storms were powerful, sometimes too powerful, and he worried that his intensity could drown rather than nourish. Every dark cloud he summoned carried a question. Would he be embraced or avoided? Would his reign be welcomed, or would the world brace against him? Beneath his thunderous exterior lived a longing to be met with understanding rather than fear. Chalchiuhtlicue's vulnerability, though quieter, was no less profound. She feared being taken for granted, mistaken for mere gentleness, her depth overlooked because she did not shout her strength. She had carved mountains with patience alone, yet many would only see the calm surface. Her longing was for someone who could sense the fierce currents beneath, who could recognize the fire wrapped in her softness. And so their energies both complemented and challenged each other. Tlaloc encouraged her to rise, to let her hidden fierceness flow more freely, to show the world the power held beneath her serene exterior. Chalchiuhtlicue encouraged him to soften, to recognize that strength did not always need to roar, that even a storm could find solace in becoming gentle rain. Their dynamic breathed with tension and harmony, water yearning to meet water, sky craving to release itself into the waiting lakes below. Every moment between them pulsed with quiet sensuality, the kind born not of touch, but of presence. In the dance of their natures, a mythic bond deepened. Tlaloc brought intensity that sparked her currents into motion. Chalchiuhtlicue brought calm that soothed the sharp edges of his storms. Mist curled around them like a tender veil, and the air thickened with moisture that held the promise of union. Rain longed to fall, waters longed to rise, and though they had only just begun to truly see one another, their connection rippled through the cosmos with the certainty of destiny. The first tremor of imbalance came softly, almost tenderly, like a hesitation inside the breath of the world. It began as a thinning in the mist that usually clung between their realms, a faint trembling in the clouds above, and a quiet sinking in the waters below. At first, neither Tlaloc nor Chalchiuhtlicue recognized it as a sign of danger. They felt it instead as a shift in mood, an uneasy stirring that made desire sharper and longing heavier. The sky held its rein too tightly, and the lakes waited too patiently for the touch they needed. There was a pause in the natural rhythm, a silence that felt too deep, as though the world itself was holding back a confession it feared to release. Tlaloc sensed it in the tension building inside his storms. The clouds he summoned grew denser, weightier, their bellies swelling with thunder that refused to break free. Lightning curled beneath his skin like restless longing, illuminating the edges of his thoughts. He felt as if he were bracing against himself, holding back a force that demanded expression. But he did not know how to release it without risking overwhelming everything he loved, including her. His passion, once exhilarating, now felt like a threat he could barely contain. It pressed against him, begging for release, while the world below waited in parched stillness, thirsty yet fearful. Chalchiuhtlicue felt the imbalance as a deep thirst running through her rivers. Her waters began to pull inward, retreating into their beds, as though trying to conserve what little remained. Streams that once hummed with gentle joy now murmured anxiously, their surfaces trembling under the weight of uncertainty. She could feel the world leaning heavily upon her, expecting her calm to remain unbroken, even as the warmth of the sun intensified, drawing moisture upward, only to let it vanish into the air. She needed Tlaloc's rain. She needed his storms. And yet the pressure she sensed within him made her hesitate to call for them. She feared the intensity he held back might crash upon her too violently. Their internal contradictions sharpened beneath this tension. Tlaloc's volatile passion surged like a storm trapped inside a narrow horizon. The more he tried to restrain it, the more unpredictable it became. His thunder no longer rolled with steady confidence, but cracked sharply, startling the mountains.
Wind swirled around him in confused spirals, as if echoing his turmoil. He tried to summon gentle rain, but every droplet he formed quivered with too much emotion, threatening to fall as a torrent instead. He feared hurting her, flooding her, overwhelming her serene depths. The fear twisted inside him like a storm that had lost its direction.
Chalchiuhtlicue, meanwhile, longed for harmony, desperately so. Her waters yearned to rise, to meet his rain in soft union, to feel the cool embrace of storms draping themselves across her lakes with intimate tenderness. But she could not forget the quiet fierceness within her, the strength that allowed her to carve valleys and reshape the land when pushed too far. If Tlaloc released all he held back, she feared she might have to rise against him to protect the world they both cherished. The thought of standing against him, even in defense, pierced her with sorrow. She wished for balance, for a gentle merging of their essences. But balance felt increasingly out of reach. The cosmic tension manifested in the land. A drought unfurled across the plains, its dry breath wilting the edges of young leaves. Cracks formed in the soil, thin lines that widened, like unspoken truths. Animals wandered farther each day in search of water, their movements slow, their bodies weary. The air grew heavy without the grounding touch of rain, holding heat like a secret it did not want to share. Chalchiuhtlicue's rivers shrank, revealing stones that had not seen the sun in ages. Her lakes shimmered with increasing fragility, their surfaces trembling at the slightest whisper of wind. And still, no rain fell. Above, Tlaloc's storms built pressure. Clouds towered high into the heavens, dark and trembling with unshed emotion. Lightning flickered inside them like a heartbeat growing faster and more desperate. Every moment he held back intensified the tension, shaping the sky into a vast mirror of his inner conflict. He wanted to release his storms gently, for her, but desire tangled with fear, creating a tempest he no longer trusted. He felt as though he stood at the edge of himself, caught between holding on and breaking open. The more the world strained, the more their desire deepened. Tlaloc longed to pour himself into her waters, to feel his rain meet her currents in the intimate language only they shared. He imagined thunder dissolving into ripples, lightning softening into mist that curled around her like a tender embrace. But every attempt to approach her brought the sky quivering closer to collapse. He feared that his touch, so desperately needed, would become too forceful, too consuming. Chalchiuhtlicue felt her waters swell with yearning, rising just enough to hint at the tide she struggled to restrain. Mist lifted from her lakes and drifted upward, reaching for the clouds like fingers seeking a lost lover. She wished to soothe his storm, to remind him that passion did not always destroy. But her restraint was also a form of fear. She worried that if she invited his full force, she might lose herself in the flood of his emotion. She wanted him close, but not consumed.
As conditions worsened, desire transformed into something sharper, more urgent. Rivers began to swell unpredictably, fed not by rainfall, but by the mounting pressure beneath her surface. Springs burst open in unexpected places, their waters rushing forward with restless energy. Chalchiuhtlicue felt herself struggling to maintain her calm facade. Her hidden fierceness stirred, rising like an undertow as she fought against the world's growing thirst. The imbalance inside her mirrored Tlaloc's turmoil above. Tlaloc,
watching her waters shift, felt guilt ripple through him. He saw the strain in her lakes, the quiet desperation in her rivers. His storms pressed against the confines of the sky, begging him to let go. Thunder cracked with longing, lightning clawed at the clouds, and he felt himself unraveling. He wanted to answer her need, to break the drought, to let his rain fall in tender blessing. But the storm within him had grown too heavy, too emotional. He no longer trusted it to fall softly. Their realms reached toward each other with increasing intensity. Mist blurred the boundaries between sky and water, rising in thick spirals that made the horizon tremble. The air felt charged, humming with tension, as if every gust of wind carried a plea neither could speak aloud. The imbalance had become undeniable, a cosmic ache, a longing so fierce that even the mountains seemed to bow under its weight. And beneath everything, woven through drought and swelling rivers, lived a shared fear, the fear of losing each other. It was this, more than any storm or drying plain, that threatened to break them. Tlaloc feared his love would drown her. Chalchiuhtlicue feared her restraint would push him away. Their desire, once effortless, now felt like a fragile thread stretched too tight. And yet, despite the pain, the yearning only grew. Storms gathered, waters trembled, mist clung between their worlds like a promise on the verge of breaking.
The breaking point arrived not with violence, but with a trembling so delicate that the world seemed to pause in reverence. The drought had carved silence across the land, and the sky had grown too heavy with unspoken feeling. Every cloud Tlaloc held strained against the tight grip of his fear. Every river Chalchiuhtlicue kept calm swelled with the weight of her longing. The imbalance that had stretched painfully between them reached its edge, that thin, trembling threshold where restraint could no longer survive. And in that fragile moment, the cosmos exhaled. The first droplet fell from Tlaloc's realm like a confession. It slipped through the trembling layers of cloud, a single bead of coolness suspended in a world that had forgotten the touch of rain. It glimmered as it fell, catching the faint light as though it carried a message shaped from thunder, sorrow, desire, and hope. Chalchiuhtlicue felt it long before it touched her waters. The drop cut through the dryness around her like a whispered truth finally spoken. When it touched the surface of her lake, it rang louder than thunder. A ripple burst outward, trembling across her body like the shiver of a withheld emotion finally freed. Another droplet fell, then another, and then, as though surrender swept through Tlaloc all at once, the sky opened. Rain crashed downward in torrents of anguished longing and desperate relief. Thunder roared with the force of a heart breaking open. Lightning tore glowing veins across the heavens, electrifying the very air. Tlaloc poured himself into the earth with a passion he could no longer contain. The storm became his confession, raw, overwhelming, and stripped of all pretense. Each drop that fell carried the truth he feared to speak. He loved her with a force that scared him. Chalchiuhtlicue accepted every drop,
Her lakes rose hungrily to meet the storm, surfaces trembling with delight. Her rivers expanded, welcoming the wild rush with a hidden fierceness long suppressed. She let her calm surface crack open under the storm's touch, revealing the powerful currents beneath. The union of their realms sent tremors through the land, filling cracked soil, quenching parched roots, reviving faded greenery with startling speed. Her waters glowed with vibrant life, emerald light piercing through the depths as if her very soul was awakening.
The rain drenched her in an embrace that felt both intimate and monumental. Each droplet, tracing her surface, felt like a fingertip gliding across skin. Each roll of thunder stirred her depths, awakening currents that spiraled upward in swirling ribbons of desire. Mist rose between them, thick and sensual, wrapping sky and water in a veil that blurred boundaries. It clung to her like a lover's breath. It curled around him like soft hands, coaxing him closer. Tlaloc descended with the storm, no longer a distant force, but a presence felt in every trembling pulse of the earth. He did not take solid form. He let his essence pour through the rain, the thunder, the shuddering clouds that pressed low against the world. Yet Chalchiuhtlicue felt him more clearly than ever. His longing sank into her waters, his sorrow washed across her surface, his yearning stirred whirlpools that spiraled from her deepest places. The storm was his voice, and he spoke without restraint. "I feared I would break you," the thunder murmured, trembling with vulnerability. Chalchiuhtlicue rose in a great surge, her waters lifting toward the sky in a shimmering column of emerald light. "And I feared I was too calm to hold you," her currents replied, swirling with fierce tenderness. The revelation rippled through the storm, softening the thunder, deepening the rain. Lightning pulsed slower, gentler, glowing like a heartbeat finally settling into someone else's rhythm. Tlaloc allowed himself to be vulnerable in a way he never had. He let the storm soften around her, let his rain fall with reverence instead of desperation. The droplets kissed her surface with delicate intimacy, each one a promise rather than a plea. Chalchiuhtlicue, in turn, allowed her waters to rise higher, embracing the storm fully. She no longer held back the fierce currents within. They spiraled upward, meeting the rain midair, mingling in tender arcs that gleamed with shifting blues and greens. Her rivers overflowed, not with destructive force, but with joyful release. The earth drank deeply without fear. Plants unfurled themselves eagerly beneath the downpour. The entire world glowed with rebirth. Together, they created a moment that felt suspended outside time. Two waters becoming one, sky and lake merging in an intimate dance that reshaped the boundaries of their realms. It was overwhelming, yet neither turned away. For the first time, Tlaloc felt the storm within him quieting, not because he forced it to, but because she soothed it. Her presence steadied him, anchored him, reminded him that storms did not always destroy. Sometimes they healed. For the first time, Chalchiuhtlicue felt her calm not as a burden, but as a gift. She felt the fierce tenderness of embracing a force so powerful without losing herself.
His intensity awakened a deeper grace within her, one that flowed with equal strength. She was not merely nurturing, she was courageous, capable of rising to meet even the wildest storm.
Lightning struck the center of her lake, not with violence, but with luminous, trembling beauty. The water glowed as though lit from within. Tlaloc's essence mingled with hers in the glow, creating currents that radiated outward in spiraling patterns. Thunder rolled through the earth, not as a threat, but as a shudder of relief. Rain fell harder, then softer, then steadier, settling into a rhythm that felt like breath shared between two beings who had finally found each other. "You are not too much," Chalchiuhtlicue whispered through her currents. "And you are not too gentle," Tlaloc answered through the falling rain. The mist thickened around them, wrapping the world in humid warmth. The storm and the waters moved together in patterns that felt instinctual, ancient, yet newly discovered. Their energies merged so completely that the boundaries between sky and lake blurred into shimmering haze. The earth vibrated beneath them, recognizing the union as something sacred. This was not chaos. This was not destruction. This was transformation. This was catharsis. The storm reached its peak, but instead of roaring wildly, it resonated with harmonious power. The rain drummed across Chalchiuhtlicue's lakes like a heartbeat, settling into perfect sync with another. Her waters surged upward to meet every drop, forming spirals, rings, and sweeping arcs that shimmered with liquid light. Tlaloc's thunder softened into deep, resonant tones that vibrated through her depths like a confession spoken directly into her core. The desire that had strained painfully between them now flowed effortlessly. No more restraint, no more fear, only release, only truth. The storm softened gradually, becoming a warm drizzle that traced gentle paths across the land. Chalchiuhtlicue's lakes calmed slowly, ripples smoothing into glassy reflections. The mist lingered, clinging lovingly to every surface, as if unwilling to let the moment fade. The world glowed with renewed life, and in the lingering warmth of their union, Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue understood something profound. They had not collided. They had merged. They had become something more than storm or lake, thunder or current. They had become balance. They had become harmony, and from that harmony, something new began to bloom. The world, after their collision of forces, did not return to stillness immediately. In the trembling quiet that followed their great convergence, the sky still shivered with the memory of thunder, and the waters across the land rippled with the last traces of Chalchiuhtlicue's stirred emotions. But slowly, in the lingering warmth that spread through the valleys and the soft blue glow that settled above the mountains, something new began to take shape, something neither storm nor river had carried alone before.
It was the gentleness born after upheaval, the calm that follows the deepest confession, the balance that arises only when two forces finally see one another with unshielded hearts. Tlaloc hovered in the high air, watching the world breathe again. His storms had quieted, their fierceness no longer driven by insecurity or the fear of losing the one presence that had always softened him. His thunder no longer echoed with desperation, but with recognition of how profoundly Chalchiuhtlicue's waters shaped him. He felt his essence settle, like rain finding its rhythm after a tempest. Where once his clouds rolled unpredictably, now they drifted with intention, carrying tenderness rather than turmoil. The sky itself seemed relieved, as though it too had held its breath during the storm. Below, Chalchiuhtlicue moved through her rivers with a new steadiness. After the surge of the climax, after allowing herself to rise and meet the storm without fear, she found her waters clearer than before. Lakes that had churned with emotion now shimmered with a purity that reflected her heart. Streams sang softly as they wound through forests, carrying the memory of their merging with the rain. She traced the edges of her rivers, feeling how the land responded to her calm, how plants lifted their leaves in gratitude, and frogs emerged again from their hidden places. Her waters no longer concealed their quiet fierceness. They expressed it gently, confidently, as ripples touching distant shores. Yet what mattered most was not the serenity of sky or river, but the new thread woven between them, stronger, steadier, luminous, no longer a connection strained by longing or shaped by fear, but one formed through choice. After the storm, they understood one another more deeply than they ever had before, and that understanding changed the rhythm of the world.
Tlaloc descended slowly, the last drops of a soft rain trailing behind him like beads of polished jade. Chalchiuhtlicue rose from the surface of a great lake, its emerald sheen reflecting her name. When they met, it was without the pressure of crashing elements or the turmoil of unspoken longing. Their energies brushed gently, rain meeting still water, cloud touching mist. The world around them brightened, colors deepening as though the earth itself wished to listen. "You withstood the storm," Tlaloc said, his voice lower than thunder now, resonant with awe. "You rose to meet me when I feared you would turn away." Chalchiuhtlicue's waters shimmered, the faintest current curling around his ankles in a gesture soft as a caress. "And you allowed yourself to be seen," she replied, "not as the god the people fear, nor as the storm that hides its heart, but as yourself. Water recognizes water, Tlaloc. You forget that sometimes." He lowered his gaze, not out of shame, but humility. "I feared my strength would overwhelm what you hold. I feared losing you to my own nature." "You never needed to fear your nature," she answered gently, "only whether you were willing to share it." Her voice echoed like a deep spring, cool and steady. "And now you have." The sky above them opened ever so slightly, sunlight streaming through the thinning clouds. Golden warmth spread across the water's surface, stirring glittering patterns that danced between them. A quiet understanding settled. Their connection,
once strained by imbalance, now rested on mutual revelation. Their worlds responded immediately. Rain no longer fell in violent bursts, but in soft, nurturing rhythms that seeped into the soil. Rivers swelled just enough to revitalize life, never too much to destroy. The land between them became a tapestry of renewal. Green terraces, blooming flowers, awakened seeds. Farmers who looked to the sky for hope found gentler seasons unfolding, as though the gods themselves had breathed healing into the earth. In the high temples, priests noticed the shift. Offerings placed on stone altars, flowers, jade beads, figurines carved from obsidian, remained dry longer, as though protected by an unseen tenderness. Rivers near the villages took on a more luminous shade, and when children splashed at their edges, they felt warmth instead of chill. Even the winds, once unpredictable companions to Tlaloc's moods, carried softer songs. But beneath the cosmic peace lay something more intimate, the renewed bond between the two deities. Tlaloc extended his hand, a motion rare for him, even among gods. Chalchiuhtlicue placed her fingers atop his, and where their touch met, the air shimmered like sunlit rain. It was not the overwhelming fusion of storm and water they had experienced in the climax. It was the quiet continuation of it. Not force, but presence. Not collision, but convergence.
"You balance me," Tlaloc murmured. Thunder softened into a distant heartbeat. "And you awaken me," Chalchiuhtlicue answered, currents swirling gently around her. "I, flowing endlessly, is not enough. I need the sky's breath, the rain's descent. Your storm reminds me I am more than stillness." Their closeness reshaped the boundary between their realms. Before, the sky had kept its distance, holding storms high above. Now clouds drifted lower, closer to the waters. Rivers rose to meet the rain without fear of being overwhelmed. And when heat built across the land, instead of unleashing violent relief, Tlaloc tempered his response, recalling Chalchiuhtlicue's gentler rhythms. Likewise, when her rivers surged with emotion, she remembered his steady thunder and found balance before overflowing. They remained distinct, storm and river, thunder and flow, but now their meeting points were chosen, not accidental. Intentional harmony replaced hesitant desire. In the days that followed, they walked the boundary between their realms together. Tlaloc traced the hillsides, letting moisture rise in soft veils that draped over the fields. Chalchiuhtlicue followed, her waters weaving through valleys, carrying life wherever they touched. Where they passed, new springs formed. Tiny rivulets carved paths through stone, and distant lakes brightened as if awakening from long slumber. "If the world remembers anything of us," Chalchiuhtlicue said softly, "let it remember this, that even forces shaped by chaos and calm can choose to meet in the center." Tlaloc nodded, his gaze lingering on the horizon where sky touched water, and that desire does not always destroy. Sometimes it transforms. Together,
they watched a gentle rain begin to fall. Not a storm, not a deluge, but a delicate fusion of their essences. Each drop glimmered like a tiny jewel, a reminder of renewal. The lake welcomed the rain with ripples that reached outward and returned inward, a pulse like a heartbeat shared between them. Harmony, once fragile, now resonated through the world with steady warmth. Their story would continue, as storm and river always must, but for now, the outcome was peace. In the quiet that follows the story of Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue, one can almost hear the lingering echo of their meeting. The softened thunder, the whisper of rivers, the pulse of renewed earth. My voice enters here not to change their myth, nor to embellish what already breathes with elemental life, but to fold their tale gently into the human heart, where stories become mirrors. For every myth that survives time does so because it reflects something unspoken yet deeply known within us. Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue, in all their storm and softness, tell a truth that reaches beyond temples, beyond clouds, beyond the shimmering veins of lakes. They teach us that connection requires courage, not only in offering one's intensity, but in receiving another's tenderness. Tlaloc, with his thunderous soul, represents those of us who carry emotions like storms, intense, forceful, aching to be understood. His outbursts are not cruelty, but the expression of feelings too powerful to remain contained. Chalchiuhtlicue reminds us of those who move through life with quiet grace, whose depths are often mistaken for calmness, though within lies a fierce and tender heart capable of rising to meet any tempest. Their story teaches that these two energies, storm and flow, passion and serenity, are not opposites meant to clash endlessly, but complementary forces capable of creating balance when both are allowed to be fully seen. We often fear that revealing our inner storm will drive others away. We fear that our river of emotions might drown those who approach too closely. The myth holds these fears gently and answers them with a simple, elemental truth, that connection arises not from perfection, but from reciprocity. Tlaloc's transformation did not come from denying his storm, but from offering it honestly, without the armor of violence or retreat. Chalchiuhtlicue's evolution came not from stilling her waters, but from letting them rise in response to her truth. Together, they learned that intimacy is not the merging of sameness, but the respectful meeting of difference. There is also a lesson about imbalance, the droughts and floods of the heart. When one withholds emotion, the world of the other grows dry. When one overwhelms, the other overflows. Harmony is not static. It is the ongoing choice to listen, to adjust, to offer, and to receive.
when Tlaloc learned to temper his storms with intention, and Chalchiuhtlicue embraced the full breadth of her currents, the world responded with renewal. In the same way, when humans choose to attune to one another, softening when necessary, rising when needed, expressing without fear, their relationships create environments where growth returns, where emotional landscapes bloom. In their union, we witness the sensuality of understanding, the subtlety of emotional touch, the tenderness of presence. Mythic sensuality is rarely about bodies. It is about energies meeting, about the moment when one soul's expression awakens something dormant in another. The rain falling into a lake becomes a metaphor for those encounters in which two beings touch in ways that reshape them. Moments that feel like recognition, transformation, and blossoming all at once. Their story whispers that true intimacy is elemental. It nourishes, expands, and brings clarity. And so the tale becomes a meditation on vulnerability. For gods whose powers could shape continents, their greatest courage lay not in commanding storms or rivers, but in revealing their inner fears and desires. This is a truth humans often overlook, that vulnerability is not smallness, but the ultimate act of trust. It bridges distances wider than skies and deeper than waters. When Tlaloc admitted his fear of losing the one who softened him, when Chalchiuhtlicue acknowledged her longing to be more than a silent flow, their bond deepened, not through perfection, but through honesty. Myths survive because their lessons endure, and here the lesson is clear. To love is to risk, but to risk is to grow. The world shaped by their reconciliation mirrors the internal world shaped by emotional balance. Just as the land flourished with gentle rains and steady rivers, so does the human spirit flourish when desire and serenity find equilibrium. This harmony is not achieved once and forever. It is chosen day by day, moment by moment, the way the sky chooses when to release rain, and the river chooses how to respond. Their relationship is a reminder that love is not a single event, but a continuous flow, like water itself.
What then does the myth leave us with? A sense that we too are made of elemental forces, of storms born from longing, of rivers shaped by memory, of mists woven from tender hope. And though we walk on earth rather than soar in the sky or surge through riverbeds, our emotions move with the same ancient patterns. We have seasons of drought when connection seems distant, seasons of overwhelming flood when feelings spill beyond our control. We have moments of thunderous urgency and moments of clarity as tranquil as a still lake. The story of Tlaloc and Chalchiuhtlicue reflect these cycles back to us, offering guidance. Embrace your nature, but learn to share it. Honor your depths, but allow others to reach them. At its heart, this myth speaks of unity, not the unity that erases individuality, but the unity that honors difference.
distance. Tlaloc remains the sky, Chalchiuhtlicue remains the river, yet between them flows a thread woven from mutual understanding. In human terms, this is the kind of connection we seek, one where each person's essence remains intact, yet contact enriches both. Love that transforms without consuming, passion that awakens without destroying, tenderness that flows without dissolving identity. As we step back from their story, may we carry its quiet glow within us. May we remember that emotional courage is sacred, that longing is a form of prayer, that connection can reshape entire worlds. And may we understand that every storm within us seeks a river to understand it, and every river within us longs for a sky that sees its depth. The myth ends, but its reflection echoes on, inviting us to meet one another with the openness of rain, the patience of rivers, and the enduring softness of water that knows it can carve mountains, not through force, but through presence.